Okay, here we go again. Um, okay, what we're talking about today, and this is take two because I accidentally stopped the first one, so we're doing a second one. We're going to talk about how you take all the information that you've gathered for your research paper and you put it all on individual idea cards, okay? So you have a stack of idea cards now. But how do you get from these idea cards with these ideas from all over the place, from this source and this source and this source and this source? And how do you take all of these and put them together into a cohesive research paper so that you can logically move from beginning to end? Okay. And, as you're gathering this information, it's all kind of confusing because you come across something that, yeah, that's going to fit in, and yeah, that's going to fit in it. But now it's like, okay, where do I fit this stuff in? Well, that's why we're doing exactly what we're doing today. Okay? Again, you have all of these note cards with this information on. Okay? And so, how do we get this information that you put on the stack of note cards? Here's one from this source, and the next one is from a different source, and the next one is from a third source. And how do we take all of this and put it together so that we're making some kind of a point with our research paper? You all have a place to start from because we wrote introductory paragraphs in class and you read them out loud, and all of you were able to make it very clear where it is you tend to go with your research paper. Okay, so you have an idea of the direction that you're going in. And as I said the day we did that, if the direction changes, then redo your introduction a little bit so that things continue to flow in a straight line. Okay, so you have the introduction. But now with your idea cards, how do we get them into an organized research paper? Step number one, take all of your idea cards and lay them out on a big desk or a big table or something like that. All of them, just lay them all out. Okay, then you have to read through each one. You have to read through every idea card and start to organize them. Now, I'll do this by, let's say that I'm writing a research paper about Nathaniel Hawthorne and why and how Hawthorne used so much witchcraft in the works that he wrote. All of you are familiar with Nathaniel Hawthorne, of course. You've all heard of the Scarlet Letter, which is probably his most famous work. But he wrote a lot of stuff. And he did a lot of stuff. He was a pretty interesting guy, actually. Well, yeah, I don't know if he was an interesting guy, but he had an interesting mind. Anyway, okay. So I take all my idea cards and I lay them all out. Okay. And so I see that first of all, I have a pile of, a bunch of them that have to do with Nathaniel Hawthorne himself. So I pick out each of the cards that I have laid out and put them in a pile, just having to do, just the cards that have to do with Nathaniel Hawthorne and witchcraft and how it relates to his own life. Okay, so I take all those and put them together. And then as I reread the rest of my cards, I see I have a pile of cards that have to do with how Hawthorne used witchcraft in a number of his short stories. So I take the ones that have to do with Hawthorne's short stories and put those in a second pile. And then I see I also have a pile of cards that have to do with Hawthorne's use of witchcraft in his novels. And again, you're all familiar with the Scarlet Letter, or at least you've all heard of the Scarlet Letter. Some of you may have seen the movie. Some of you may have read the novel. It's one of Hawthorne's great novels. Hawthorne wrote a lot of great stuff. Okay, so that would go in a third pile. Okay, so we've taken our information now and divided it into three piles, and it seems logical that the first thing we're going to talk about is Nathaniel Hawthorne himself. Okay, so on a piece of paper, I'm writing down Nathaniel Hawthorne. or Nathaniel Hawthorne's life, and Witchcraft. So I don't know if you can read that, but that says Nathaniel Hawthorne's life and Witchcraft, okay? And all the cards that I had in pile 1 had to do with that. So now I take pile 1, the pile that had to do with Nathaniel Hawthorne's life and Witchcraft, and I organize within that pile, okay? So I find out, I see in there that, first of all, Nathaniel Hawthorne was born and raised in Salem, Massachusetts. So, Hawthorne, Witchcraft, Salem, Massachusetts, that's pretty significant, okay? So, so that's going to be one of the first cards that I have down there, okay? Then, I may make a note at that point, born in Salem, because that's going to be something that I want to include in my paper, okay? And why is Salem important? Because, of course, we have the Salem witchcraft trials, okay? So my next cards then would have information about the Salem witchcraft trials, and I put those in order. So I'm making notes here, witchcraft trials, okay? And so, what I've discovered through my reading is that those witchcraft trials came about because, first of all, the people who had settled in Salem had settled there for the right to practice their own religion. So they were a religious-based bunch, okay? And that's important, that I'm making a note here, religious-based, okay? And obviously I would expand upon that in my paper, but that's an important point that I'm going to want to make, okay? And so, as with most people, religion is important to them, unfortunately, too often only when we feel like we need it. We all need it all the time, but we don't all realize we all need it all the time, okay? And so, it's like we've all been in the situation where we have a big test tomorrow. So we cram like crazy tonight, but we know we're not really prepared. And so we pray, dear God, please help me through this one test. And then I will never let this happen again. Okay. And so we take the test and, so we end up passing the test. And then it's like our promise to God kind of falls by the wayside. Well, that's what happened with these people, and in a sense, we don't go back to God until the next test is coming. Okay. Well, these people, as their society, they all, half the people that came on the Mayflower died of starvation that first year, okay? Half of them died of starvation, or half of them died. They went from 104 to 52, and most of those who died of starvation. So they were in tough straits, but they got settled and got a society going, and things got better for them, okay? I want to make sure that's not my bride. No, it's not. Okay. Life got a little easier for them, and so the role of God tended to fade a little bit in their life. And now, all of a sudden, in 1692, you have some kids who have been working with a woman named Tituba, listening to a woman named Tituba, who was a servant woman from the East Indies or West Indies, whichever. And she told the kids about witches and spells and all this stuff that they had going on in where she was from. And so the kids thought this was really cool. And so they thought they'd act like they were bewitched and went to the center of town and started rolling around acting crazy one day. And so, you make notes on this. You make a note and you put your cards in that order. Okay. This is the next thing I'm going to be in. And I'm writing this down as my cards get organized that way. So we write down Tituba and we write down the kids and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So, it's like now you have somebody in town who says, whoa, yeah, I know witchcraft. And then there's other people from this town that are from the same place I am, and they know witchcraft, and they know spells and all this kind of stuff. So We're dealing with 1692. People are scared by all of this, really frightened. Okay, um, and so witchcraft got to be a rage in the town. Okay, um, and um, anyway, Hawthorne was directly connected to this not only because he lived in Salem, but also because his great great grandfather was a judge in the witchcraft trials. So that's part of what got him so involved. Okay, so I would make a note, grandfather was a judge. Okay, um, then, okay, also Hawthorne's father died when he was about 6 years old. And so I'm making note, and I'm putting my cards in this order as I'm going. Okay, and then I'm making notes in my outline. Um, and and what that meant was his mother became a recluse, a shut-in, shut out the rest of the world, and kind of caused her kids to be the same way. So Hawthorne became somebody who was really by himself most of the time at a very young age, became pretty much an introvert, and with their puritanical background, too often his thoughts turned to thoughts of evil and the human heart and what makes us who we are, and of course, the witchcraft thing that was part of Salem, um, and his tie with his grandfather. And so I've put all my cards in that order, and I've laid out, what I'm saying about it in a certain form like that to indicate what each card says, and making a note of kind of what each card says on there. Okay. So, and I could talk more about Hawthorne, but we don't want this video to be an hour long. Okay. So then we're going to talk about Hawthorne's short stories, and I'm going to abbreviate here, and witchcraft. And I come across two really good short stories that deal with witchcraft. One is called Young Goodman Brown, and again, I'm abbreviating, but Young Goodman Brown is actually the story of a young guy from Salem going to a witch's Sabbath and how that affected the rest of his life. The irony is, he wasn't even sure he went to the witch's Sabbath. He didn't know if he fell asleep on the way. He didn't know what happened. He may have dreamed the whole thing, or he may have gone and possibly even seen his wife there. And so the explanation of that whole story and witchcraft, Young Goodman Brown and witchcraft, is pretty significant. And then there's another story, The Minister's Black Veil, and it's all about evil in Salem, Massachusetts, and a minister, and how he puts a veil over his face, because all of us wear a mask. None of us really show our inmost heart. And so one of the lines as he's dying is when the friend shows his inmost heart to his friend, the lover to his best beloved, when mankind does not vainly shrink from the eye of his creator, loathsomely treasuring up the secrets of his sin. So you get an idea of what that's all about. That's all about evil and witchcraft, And so I would put my cards that I had in that order, okay? So I've done all the stuff about Hawthorne himself. Then his short stories. Okay, so Young Goodman Brown, and detailing that out, the Witch's Sabbath and such, and then the Minister's Black Veil, and detailing that out and how that all relates to evil and witchcraft. And then the third pile I have of cards is on Hawthorne's novels, and so I'm making notes on this, so I'm laying out, and I hope you can see this, but I'm creating an outline here for how my ideas are going to go. Now in through the short story area, I didn't really take the time to spell stuff out on here, only for the sake of our time on this video. But if I were, I would have put notes about going to a witch's Sabbath and meeting the devil in the forest, and seeing his wife Faith, who was the center of his faith at this witchcraft trial, etc., etc., etc. I would have gone into detail because I would have had note cards that explained all that. And the same with the Minister's Black Veil. But again, for the sake of time, I'm abbreviating all of this. But then I get down to this part about Hawthorne and his novels, okay? And I have the Scarlet Letter. But I don't know, I haven't done a lot about the Scarlet Letter yet. I only have a little bit of information about the Scarlet Letter. So now I know that I need to do more research on this part of what I'm doing, okay? So by laying this out, graphically putting all of your information in front of you, you can see where maybe you've done a lot, because it's obvious that I've done a lot on Hawthorne here. But maybe I really need to do more on Young Goodman Brown. Or maybe I really need to do more on the Minister's Black Veil, okay? Or, I know I need to do more down here. So taking all of your cards, laying them all out, organizing them, putting them down, because pretty much all topics break down into 2 or 3 or 4 parts, sometimes 5 parts. It's rare for them to break down into more than 5 parts, but sometimes they do. So you organize all your cards that way, and then when you write it out on an outline, you can see where you stand. Do I need more information on this section? Or do I have enough information on this section? Okay? So that's how you go about creating an outline for your paper. And by spending 45 minutes and doing that, you can take all of that anxiety about what order do I put this stuff in? How do I take it? You get rid of it all. I've been using the word process from the beginning. This is a big part of the process, okay? This is, other than doing the research, this is probably the most critical part of the process. Obviously, you can't do this part if you haven't done the research. But again, this is a tool to show you not only what you have, and not only what order you're going to talk about it in, but also where do I need to do more? Or where can I stop doing it? Because you may have a favorite part, but you may have enough about it. So stop spending your time on that research and go on to something else, okay? So try to do this between now and next Wednesday when I see you. And Wednesday, bring in your note cards with you, bring in your outline with you. I want to see what you're doing. I want to answer questions for you on this. I don't think it's a terribly difficult process to understand, but try to do this, try to organize, setting up your note cards in order, and now you understand why I said just making notes on a computer or on a sheet of long paper won't help you. Because if you just made notes on regular paper like this to start with, instead of using note cards, you can't take them and rearrange them on that sheet of paper. But you can rearrange these note cards any way you want, okay? So hopefully you understand the use of the cards better and how that all fits in, okay? So questions, you know where to get me. Again, I apologize that I can't be in class Friday, but this is a close family funeral that I have to be at tomorrow, okay? So you guys have a great weekend. Those of you who are not feeling so well, Maddie, Christian, I know you two are in a little bit rough shape. Hopefully you will feel pretty good soon. But if not, please get back to me. And Maddie has COVID, so who knows when she'll be back. But, Maddie, we're going to keep in touch with you, okay? So keep in touch with me. You know where to get me. And have a good weekend.